Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the July Norms event. It's the fourth round, and in this round I am playing International Master Roberto Martin del Campo. I've played him one time, like 10 years ago in a tournament in Maryland. I was white in that game. That was one of the only times I ever played the C3 Sicilian live over the board, and he killed me. Uh, and in this game, I came to take my revenge. You know, it's one of those anime plot lines where the villain has aged a little bit, the protagonist has gotten a little bit older, more mature, and so on and so forth. So before we get into the games, friendly reminder: first link in the description. All the courses are 33% off if you use code SUMMER. You may not want to get any courses after watching my terrible performance in round 2 and 3, but looking to bounce back. Just want to say that I have read your comments. A lot of you are supportive, you know, through thick and thin, and I appreciate it. But I will be honest, when results are going poorly, I'm much more, I just feel like anybody would be much more sensitive to just hearing the noise and the nonsense. So I decided to disconnect and not take a look whatsoever for the most part. So in this game, I went for a Trumpowski. What I know about Roberto is that he likes to play various Indians, and I don't mean Indians like Vishwanathan Anand. I mean, this is the old Indian defense. He likes some different King's Indians as well, and I thought I would take all of that out of the equation. I thought the Trumpowski was like, you know, my old true and tried weapon, and he was not going to be one of these guys who plays D5 and just plays a solid line. He's going to play for C5 and knight E4. And for a long time, I've been playing H4, but in this game, I decided that I would bring the bishop back to f4, which is actually what I used to play. I really went back in time here. And after c5, the move that I have always played in my games is the move d5. So basically what I did is I took a weapon that I played about 95% of the time, but I have a good amount of familiarity with it otherwise. What I did after c5 is I didn't go d5. I actually played this move f3. And the idea of this move is that you kick the knight out, and then you want to build up a little wall as well. He gives me this check, inducing the move c3 and blocking my own knight. But now we have this position, right? And I just really wanted to get something like this from the opening. I wanted a confrontational, you know, interesting game. The only line I really checked was the immediate decision to attack my pawn on d5. White can play like this, and there's been a lot of just a handful of interesting games from like this position where White can even hide the king on f2, play g4 to prevent knight h5, and it's a very interesting game. Like knight a3 kicks the queen out, and then you can play a4, just a dynamic position. He thought for a little bit and played d6, which is natural for a person that's going to play King's Indians. I didn't really look at this. Now he can't really go e6. The reason you have to play e6 first is because there's no pawn on d6 for black. I can't really put my pawn here because he will immediately go and round it up. But once he plays d6, he's going to have a lot of difficulty going here because now there's a target on that square. That's why I just played e4 and he went here. And here I didn't really know what to do. I can play like anything, to be honest. I can play knight a3 to go knight c4. I can play knight d2 to go knight c4. I can play a4 to go knight a3, knight c4. I can play queen d2 with a potential kind of like idea bishop h6. This might be a little bit too expedited. For example, I was contemplating playing for h4 here. It's a very common idea in these sort of positions to plant the bishop there, defended by the queen, and then hammer away with h4. The reason is if you just play h4, black can just play h5. Or even knight h5, but knight h5 is stupid because I'll kick it out. But yeah, like h4, h5, and now white can't really get any sort of attack. So I thought put the bishop on h6 and then hammer away. You know, if he lets me with h4, h5, but black can actually allow me to go through the entire attack. And for example, like I can do all of this. I'm never mating him. So I thought about that, you know, and I decided to play queen d2, and it actually spooked him because he thought here for like 30 minutes. He must have really not liked something about this move. In hindsight, I probably should have just played knight a3 because if this wasn't really going to work, then I could have just played it in this move order, because in this move order with my knight on a3, I prevent the move b5, and that is one source of counterplay. So he thought for a while, and then he played b5. And I was like, oh yeah, he could play that move. I'm not like losing. In fact, it now just opens up another world of possibilities. And this is the kind of player he is. Like I was ready for one of these dynamic battles. I was always also ready to crack my back as I record these recaps at 7 in the morning. So I had a couple of options here. I'm not going knight a3 anymore because he will play a6 or even bishop d7. And I thought about playing the immediate b4. It's a very interesting move. And what I had calculated here was takes, queen b6. Here I calculated knight c3, a6, and then maybe something like a4. Just trying to attack on the queen side. Stockfish loves this for white. I don't really understand why. I mean, I saw this entire variation, but in my mind I was like, well, I'm just opening the whole queen side. I don't quite understand. Yeah, like the computer says bishop e3, knight d7 preventing knight b6, and just knight e2. Okay. Yeah, so no real immediate kind of gain. I just improve my position, and apparently I'm better. Bishop g7, knight d4, and yeah, this position is just a lot better for white. Okay. I mean, I kind of saw this, and I didn't really understand if it was plus 1.7 like the computer says, but I was looking for something that I could understand a bit more, so I played this move. And the point of this move is a temporary pawn sacrifice, and he really has to take, because if he plays b4, I thought I would just get a very pleasant position here after basically any move. Like I thought even. Like, I can close the queen side, and I have a massive space advantage, I thought. But I can also play bishop b5, like bishop d7, and then play c4. Or even take. I can just leave this pawn here. But he took. It was a temporary pawn sacrifice to get my knight to the c4 square, and then slowly win this pawn back. And I was feeling pretty lucid here. Like, I felt like my plans, I was understanding his ideas, I was understanding my ideas. I was like, I'm going to get a piece to c4, and then develop in castle, and then slowly I'll win the pawn back, right? He surprised me with a move here. I thought he was going to play knight d7 right away, or bishop d7, potentially, like to defend this pawn, and then I was going to go here. He would like go to c7 or d8, and I can't really win this pawn back, so I'll just leave it there and go about my business. But he played bishop a6, which is an interesting move. And kind of like the point here is that he's just going to take the knight when it arrives there. And that's what he did. And then he's going to play knight d7, knight b6. So he's really not going to give me this pawn. And yeah, that's what he played, knight d7. I was a bit frustrated here, to be honest, because if I play b3, for example, and he plays knight b6, right? And then if I play bishop back to d3, he can probably continue to chip away. So I came up with an interesting idea here. First, I would develop my knight. The idea of developing my knight is support over this pawn and a step closer to castling. When he developed this, then I played b3. And the idea is I want to play rook a4. When he goes here, now I have this idea, bishop d3. This is still pinned, and the queen actually has no moves. So I'm threatening b4. I'm threatening b4, which straight up traps his queen. He can get out of this by sacking a knight and then escaping, but and if I take his queen, he would have taken my queen. But that was the idea, and I thought bishop d3 was really clever. Now, I had foreseen here that he has a nice tactical resource to get the queen some breathing room, which is the amazing move c4, which is called a clearance sacrifice. If I take on c4, his queen is now safe. He also gets the c5 square for his other piece, and he activates his bishop. This is not something I want. So in a vacuum, c4 is actually a really nice move. It almost solves all of his problems, but there does continue to be a problem, though, and it's the fact that I have danger levels here, which is the move b4. So I don't take either pawn. I create a wedge, and again, I'm playing for the long-term weaknesses of both a-pawns. And now that he played the move c4, I have d4 and c6 for my knight. So very interesting positional concepts at play here, in the sense that, you know, when he goes queen b5, for example, my original idea had been knight d4, but I realized that this was bad because he has e5, and I'm blocking my own queen. I have to take en passant, and he's gonna put some pressure on me here. So we did it this way. He castled. Now here, I thought maybe 7 minutes because I really wanted to play h4, and I couldn't decide if h4 did anything. I was like, if I play h4, h5, and then castle, is this a better version for me than this position? Like, this is what happened in the game. I did not play h4, and I couldn't tell, like, if the position with h4, h5 is better or worse for me. I evaluated it as better for me because he can't play knight h5 anymore, and also g6 is just weaker, right? Like, in the endgame, he weakened his structure. But I did not think that he had to play h5. That's the thing. h4, h5 is better for me, but I thought maybe he would play a5. Because again, he wants to activate his rook. If we get to this position, I'm never winning this pawn back. Then I'm in serious trouble. So I decided to just castle, right? He went back to d7, setting up the idea to go e5. So he has e5 and a5. It's a critical moment for me. We both have about maybe 20, 25 minutes on the clock. And I decided here to sidestep both e5 and prevent the move a5. So I want to avoid e5 coming with a tempo potentially, and I want to prevent the move a5 entirely. And I also want to enable the move knight d4. The reason I cannot play knight d4 because I will lose the ability to go that way when he plays e5, and now that's none of those squares are protected anymore, and I'm sort of like I have to move back anyway. So I played a very nice move here, Stockfish's top choice, which is bishop e3. That move does not look like it does anything, but it's a very important move because he cannot play a5 now for this brief moment. And also I'm enabling knight d4. So for instance, I mean, I don't know what he could do here, but like now I would get my knight to c6, which is a massive improvement in my position because that knight is going to stay there for a while. So he played e6, which again, it looks like he's making progress here, but actually e6, believe it or not, as natural as it looks, is a step in the wrong direction after this simple exchange. And the point is that I control him. My structure prevents his knights from moving at all. And the move d5 won't come so naturally because I will just go e5. And I have a new wedge. And now I have this wedge. And his counterplay is still totally stifled. Like his bishop is totally blocked now. So I took, and then here I came up with another top engine move, which is now it's time to go collect that pawn, right? Like I've waited long enough. I'm undeveloping my queen. Now that pawn has absolutely nobody protecting it. And the pawn on c3, which is my biggest weakness, is guarded very nicely by this knight on e2. And so he played queen c7, which I had anticipated. Also around here, my amazing wife, Lucy, she had gotten some lunch with a friend of ours nearby, and she actually stopped by and she dropped off a mango soba. I think that's what it's called. A bubble tea? Boba, some of you might know it as. And yeah, that lifted my spirits around here. So, you know, it was a complicated position, but I knew now that I have that boba, I got to win the game. You can't, first of all, you can't be 1 out of 4 as the second seed in the Niam Norm section. And second of all, you know, I got the mango soba boba. That's fun to say. So yeah, love you, wifey. She's sleeping right now. Only I'm the lunatic recording my game recaps at 7 in the morning, quietly, so I don't wake her up. So queen d1, and I took a sip of my boba, and I went for the a4 pawn, but not yet, because when he goes queen c7, his idea is to sidestep the tempo move and also play d5. Remember I said a moment ago that d5, e5? Yeah, but not with the queen on c7, right? So I decided to play knight d4 here. And the idea of knight d4 is I attack the pawn on e6, he defends it, and then I go to b5. But I'm not looking to take on d6. I thought that this was inviting way more problems than it was giving me benefits. Because then suddenly he goes here, I have bishop d4, but all his pieces come alive. And yeah, I correctly saw that there's a tactic here, knight c3, bishop c3, rook d6. Which is a crazy tactic to pick up a bishop and then my pawn and then start pushing. It's a crazy, crazy position. So instead I took on a4 and we traded and he played the move a6. And I think here I caught him. I think he might have missed my idea here because it looks like I have to go backwards. But again, like the prophecy is coming true. I've gotten my pawn back and now he has a long-term weakness. So really my entire game plan has worked, which is nice to have. It's nice to actually play a game of chess for once where you control both your and your opponent's moves. You know, for a guy with some confidence issues right now on the chessboard, not to mention at times crippling OCD. You know, it's nice to control a chess game. You know, it's I think it's one of the reasons I take losses so brutally. I played knight a7 though, and knight a7's a really savage move because I shoved my horse down his throat, and now the a pawn cannot be protected at all. I anticipated that there was a way to create counterplay here, and he did, which was knight d7. So I'm gonna get 2 pawns. He's gonna get 1. Although I thought that I should maybe even defend this before I take this, but I couldn't help myself here. Like, he had about 5-6 minutes, I had about 12, and I was like, if I play fast and apply pressure, good things will happen. So I took and took. I mean, it's just really difficult not to take a free pawn in an endgame. And now the game plan is push the pawn, right? So I have either rook b1 or b5, b6, b7. And I could not figure out the difference between the two of them. Admittedly, I completely overthought it and completely lost my advantage here, which is, you know, really depressing considering I had the boba bonus. You know what they say, pass pawns should be pushed. But unfortunately, you cannot live your life in the chess world with generalities. And I liked rook b1 because I'm actually trapping his bishop. So just so you understand, like knight b5 just wins a full bishop. And I thought it would be good to escort my pawn. Like, I thought it made sense to escort my pawn before I pushed it. The only reason I didn't play this is I didn't like that his bishop can, like, dance out of my position and he can start pushing his own pawn. But I guess then I can still maybe play rook b1. So, I don't know. I mean, and ultimately I overthought it. Of course, in a blitz game, I would play b5 and I wouldn't even think about it. Admittedly, this move only gives away the advantage because of a really absurd move by black that I had not even considered. You know, I thought he needed both rooks to create counterplay. The machine just says trade rooks, which for some reason I just didn't look at this move at all. I just thought, why would you trade rooks? Like, now I'm gonna push, but the computer finds bishop d2, and apparently black is better, which is just absurd. So the point is that I actually lose the pawn race because he has knight d7. And in this completely ridiculous situation, I'm suddenly out of moves. For example, if I play h3, he hits me with tempo and rook d1. Which is just, I mean, and if I queen and get this position, I cannot escape the check and promotion. It's just unbelievable. Like, of course I didn't see bishop d2. Now, again, my heart rate was, you know, going up. I saw that he had like 2-3 minutes on the clock. I mean, you're never thinking that you can lose the position when you're up a pawn in an endgame and you're 3 squares away from promotion, right? Like, so rook d8 did not occur to me or him just at all. Which is why, you know, again, I threw the game a little bit. I should have just played b5. This doesn't work anymore. Because I can actually just trade, and now I'm a step ahead in the race. But also I can just reinforce my rook when he plays. I can just play here because I haven't gone to b1 yet. But whatever, rook b1, rook b8. Okay, business is planned. And then here, he has about a minute on the clock, and I find this nice idea to attack his pawn, force his knight here, and then go pick up the knight, right? Knight d3, rook c2, and that's it. I'm gonna win. But he goes here. And I go here, and all of a sudden, I'm in panic mode. Because I have no moves. He's threatening to take my knight. So, he's threatening to take my knight, and this is mate. I'm mated. Like, I'm going to get mated. Now, my entire plan was to take his pawn. I can't do that anymore, because he's going to take my knight. And if I take, it's mate. And if I give him a check, king f7. And then if I give him a check, he's just gonna go back. This is insane. How is this happening? Like, and he's not gonna take, by the way, because then I take and I'm actually gonna promote because it's not mate anymore because the bishop is covering. So I'm like, wait, what? Then I thought rook b5. But rook b5 also doesn't work because he sacks the bishop. It's insanity. Look at this. Bishop b6, rook a7. If I play rook b6, rook here, rook c4, it's mate. That knight on d3 is covering. I'm like, oh my god, what have I done? What have I done? So I start thinking, do I have time to play h4 and try to run away? But he wins my knight. He's just winning a full knight because this is check. And then I'm queening, but he has check. And then he stops my pawn. Or he has this, and I'm getting hunted out here. I'm like, wait a minute, how is this happening? Am I gonna get checkmated? Bishop d8? Rook h4 checkmate? Like, how? Bishop c7 is just winning the game. I can't run my king anymore. But I calmed down, and I realized that after h4, I am winning. Because after all this happens, I don't have to run my king. I can block. And this is so important because now he has to stop me queening with rook a1. Now I take c4, and I'm not just threatening the bishop. I'm also threatening that when the bishop moves, I have a check on the back rank, and I queen, and I'm going to be winning the rook for the pawn. And it would take a little bit more converting, but he chose to resign here. He chose not to play out in the endgame. That's, you know, that's his decision. So I won. Pretty smooth sailing all the way through. Little bit of a hiccup with this whole bishop a5 thing, but position was good enough that I was able to find h4 and g3. And I mean, I would have liked to win without, you know, kind of scaring myself, but it is what it is. So 2 out of 4. Decent bounce back win, getting revenge for 10 years ago. And we look to keep it rolling in round 5. I'm going to upload round 5 literally right now, and then you will see it in a few hours. Appreciate you all. Thanks again for your support, even in tough times. And I'll see you in round number 5. Get out of here.